Gumede is in Devon. Somewhere he was seen there. He was seen by the beach, so he's not here. I haven't seen Mubangiz. All right. Where is Rulashe? Oh, we're here. So, okay, so what we're gonna do is to please give them a microphone, roving mic. So the session that is taking place tonight, colleagues, as we did yesterday and the other day and the other day, the program is run such that in the evening, when we have dealt with all the presentations, you begin to consolidate, distill, shift from dealing with evidence issues that you were dealing with throughout the day and enter a different developmental zone. And so the way it's designed tonight is we'll have these colleagues who have vast experience in editing journals. They will talk to us, of course, they are also marketing, but they will talk to us about, the craft of preparing a paper for the journal, which is something that is of interest to everybody here, especially those who are presenting papers, because they are looking for journals right now where they can publish those papers. So we'll talk about that politics of publishing in journals. What do they look for as chief editors when they are looking for papers? If also you can even talk about technology as well, since many journals now, I think and hope the deputy editor together with the chief editor are going to procure the system for JOPA to do the same. As in many instances now, journals are using journal management systems that tend to be sophisticated with different AI tools that have been built onto them. So if you can, I know Zondi's journals, for example, you have to do that when you are running it. So I will give them between 5 to 7 minutes each to make their inputs. Later on, then we will take questions from yourselves, and then we will swiftly move to the next segment of this evening, where we will be talking about books. So should we start with you, Prof. Melo, then you pass on the mic.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hello? Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Program Director. Yes, according to the program, it's supposed to be Professor Paho, but unfortunately he had to dash out. I am his deputy as well as the managing editor. The Journal of Public Administration, I'm sure all of you know, it is our pride and joy in the field of public administration. We have an online system through which people can submit. And once a manuscript has been submitted, we send it to about 3 reviewers. And normally that is where the challenges are starting. And I'm sure you heard yesterday when Professor John Molepo was talking about the reviewers, that I ended up being the only person who was clapping when he was saying, you must review articles. Now, in terms of the submissions, when you submit, we require that you should also state that the draft article that you are submitting has not been submitted elsewhere and would not be submitted elsewhere while it is still with us. But we also have realized that for some articles, as we are about to finalize them, and we check with the authors whether this article can be corrected, and then we get told that this article has actually already been published elsewhere. So if it means that that article might have been submitted to journals at the same time. Now, we require that a journal article, when it is being submitted, it must be a maximum of 8,000 words. We have come across instances where articles have gone beyond 8,000 words. And in those instances, we have to refer them back. And again, as we go through the submissions, we also receive a lot of submissions that have been harvested out of the masters and dissertations, master's dissertations as well as thesis. But I think in some instances, authors and maybe supervisors in some instances do not master the craft of having to translate that thesis into a journal article. Because as you read, you can see that this is from a dissertation, or rather a thesis. Now, for emerging scholars, sometimes we say, no, this article is not good enough. And it's not Phago, it is not me. But we are the messengers. We are the ones who are conveying the message of the 3 or 2 reviewers. Now, to the reviewers as well, we also have a request that sometimes you would know that we also put you under pressure to say, we want this issue to be out. Please help us with the review. And then what we find in some instances is that there will just be ticks, yes, no, yes, no. But in the end, that is actually not helpful with regard to the quality of the journal. What we will appreciate is that reviewers must be more extensive in terms of either saying yes or saying no. If we say, for instance, this draft article is acceptable, or it is not acceptable, or let's start with the one who says this article is not acceptable. You should help me and Prof. Phago by giving us more detailed explanation as to why is this article not meeting the minimum standard. Similarly, where you are saying it is acceptable with minor revisions, please also indicate what are those minor revisions. And in fact, at some point I was saying that with regard to the awards that we're giving, perhaps we also need to have the award for the best reviewers. Because there are reviewers who would go through an article through track changes, comments in the comment box, as well as the track changes. And when we send it back to you, it is read. But after you have looked into the recommended changes, then you realize that, in fact, this reviewer or the 2 reviewers were actually uplifting the work that I have done. And therefore, our request is that as much as you can, give very detailed comments. And I think the other issue is also the emerging scholars, those who have never published. Again, it's an issue that we're looking at, that perhaps as SAPAM, we also need to start looking into the possibility of the writing for publications. Because sometimes you reject an article, but when you look at the main theme, the theme is relevant in terms of the current affairs. But the person could not package that article into something that can be acceptable for publication. And therefore, if we have such writing retreats, they would be able to help the emerging scholars. So finally, I would like to say that the quality of the journal, which is still accredited by the Department of Higher Education, is in your hands. Let us take our work of reviewing much more seriously. And John was saying that maybe next day we're going to flash and say, these are the articles that we have, and these are the reviewers that never bothered to come back to us. So we hope that we would not get to that point of naming and shaming, but we'll get regular feedback as soon as we give articles to you for purposes of review. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, and good evening to you all. So I'm speaking as an editor with the Journal of Public Administration and Development. So this journal actually started in 1949 by the British government, who at the time called it the Journal of African Administration. And the names changed later on to Journal of Local Administration Overseas. And then it moved to the Journal of Administration Overseas. And in 1981, the British government privatized the journal, and Wiley then acquired it. So from 1981, when Wiley, as the publisher, acquired it, they actually did then change the name to Public Administration and Development. I don't know if the slides, yes, if you can put the slides on the screen, that will be appreciated. All right, so just trying to give you a bit of history. So from that time to now, I think last year, the journal actually celebrated its 75th year in the discipline. And for every milestone, so 25, 50, 75, the journal would actually take time to chronicle all that the journal has been doing, and all those publications are actually on the journal website. So you would find references to that effect and to that regard. So there are some of the issues regarding the processes of publication and peer reviewing, and Prof mentioned them. So I would not dwell on them. But I'm actually, passionate about talking to scholars from the global south, and especially from Africa, because it's actually a journal that is sitting with diversities in terms of the editorial board. I do have one person who is also here with us as the editorial board. You want to stand up so that people can see you, Prof? Yes. All right. So we are very few. It's a journal sitting within some of the top journals in public administration, and our representation, especially within the continent, just got its limelight, I think, in the past 2 or 3 years. And for me, I've been passionate about submission, especially within the continent. I think that my advantage of being in that journal is to actually promote journals or papers or publications that are coming from the continent. And I want to, and I have been trying to do that passionately, and that's why I would really encourage scholars, because a lot of times once we think about journals, top journals in public administration, we don't even want to give attention to submitting our papers there. But these papers get reads much more when they are published in those journals. Even people from outside the continent would have then the opportunity to read those publications. I just want to mention here, because I did put in some questions that authors would, frequently ask, and maybe if those questions are answered, it would do a lot more good. But just to let you know that, oftentimes when the trajectory of a journal is actually also, it has the influence of who is the chief editor or the editorial board members. And I think that this current editorial board membership in that journal actually has some form of diversity and inclusivity. So we have 2 chiefs and 5 coordinating editors, which I happen to be one. I have to then be the one to look at your paper, look for reviewers, and when it comes, depending on what decision the reviewer does take, I would still also look at it and see what merits, because we decide in the end whether this paper actually can proceed forward or not. So we have the 2 chiefs, the one sitting in the UK and the one in South America. And then we have other diversities of editors sitting in China, but also in Canada and another one in UK. And also the inclusivity also comes with female representation as well. And then the one which is me now sitting within the continent of Africa. I thought to actually emphasize that. And in terms of moving forward and getting more innovative, we do have publications of abstracts in different languages. So you can actually request that your abstract be published in your language. That is some of the the innovation that the journal is bringing. So when Prof mentioned rewarding reviewers, we already are doing that as a journal. So some of the frequently asked questions are, so for instance, what common mistakes do you see in submitted manuscript, and how can authors avoid them? So some of the issues we can find is actually plagiarism, because the system is actually built in such a way that it can pick your plagiarism score. It also can get, there is an algorithm that can indicate if there is a concern. It will actually flag it up in terms of the possible reviewer of that journal. So if there is an affiliation, either by co-authoring, the algorithm would actually flag it up, and then we don't have to invite someone who is close to the author or related to the author. And when that publication is not relevant to public administration, maybe it's a lot more to deal with other disciplines than public administration, or it's not related to development, that can actually be flagged off as well. So we actually emphasize that you know your audience and explain what you found, what you meant, and why it matters. Why is your findings or your publication actually important? And then other questions that authors can ask is, how should authors respond to reviewers' comments and implement revision? So with respect and just be grateful, because some of those reviewers actually take their time to do those reviews. So we expect that authors should be grateful that someone is available to review your article. So rather than being argumentative, you could actually put some decorum in your reply. And if someone thinks you meant X and you actually meant Y, it's not. We think it's not the reviewer's fault. Maybe you should frame it in such a way that the reviewer would understand, but also the editorial board. We weigh in a lot more when we see biasness in reviewers, because we have reviewers pool, and some of them are sitting in the West, and they have to review papers from Africa. So we also would flag it off when we see that it's just unnecessary bias in the response to the publications. So detail how you have responded to each comment, just like Prof is saying. You put the comments and put, if possible, copy-paste whatever you actually respond, or what you did to ensure that you changed the work. Because sometimes the system or the platform is in such a way that sometimes you would not see the reviewers or the authors' changes, but then it's just good to not just say yes or no, just like Prof said. And other questions with, what criteria are most important to you when selecting manuscript for publication? And so we actually, they have to be something important that you have to say. Will anyone read this work? You want to pay attention to such questions. Will anyone care? Will anyone even cite it? Will it be informative to practitioners? Because we also do pay attention to practitioners. We have practitioners who also review for the journal, because from the start, there has been field notes, publications, and up to now, we actually would accept reports or field notes from practitioners as well. So I want to give the author the opportunity to actually respond as they see it fit. So in terms of handling conflict, we would give the authors the opportunity to actually respond and make sure you're actually responding to the reviewer's comments and not just returning the manuscript as it is. I had to reject a paper at the 4th review because each time we ask the authors to make amends, they would return the manuscript as it is. And it was sad for me, but it was just the necessary decision to take. And I thought, what a missed opportunity, especially when I have to manage manuscript from Africa. I take them with passion. In fact, sometimes, even if the reviewer says it's a rejection, but the reviewer actually provides extensive comments that we think that those comments can actually improve the paper, we will tell the reviewer that, yes, we know you want this rejected, but you gave good comments that we think if the authors actually pay attention to, that paper can be improved. So therefore, we want to give the authors the opportunity to actually work on the paper. What current trends and topics are particularly in demand in your journal? Sustainable development, well-being approaches to government. We pay attention to policy capacity, export promotion, counter-narrative, comparative studies, intellectual hegemonies. We pay attention to indigenous approaches to public administration, to even decolonization. During our 75th anniversary last year, I and one of the editors actually co-authored a paper around epistemic justice and what that means, especially for authors sitting within middle income and low income countries or even disadvantaged regions of the continent. We also do special issues. So if we, one of the submissions I want to do to actually advance, and especially in conferences like this, to actually have the opportunity to advance for a special issue where scholars can actually contribute, but there is a lot of emphasis on quality. So you would at the end be happy that you have a publication with PAD, but it would take a lot from you to actually get that done. And how do you handle interdisciplinary work that lies at the intersect of various public administration related discipline? That is a great question. We actually have those type of publications or manuscripts, but we want to see the element, or we want to see the paper actually emphasizing public administration in it at the end. We want, because our audience matters to us, so we don't want papers that will speak to other discipline and not have anything to do with public admin and management. And of course, there is the opportunity to publish open access, especially if your university has a subscription that is open access. You can actually have the privilege of having that publication open access. But if your university does not have a subscription with Wiley, then you have to pay for that publication. But I think most universities, especially within in the country, and few within the continent, do have a subscription with Wiley. Lastly, I just want, can you project the slides? Just. Okay, can you go to, okay, stop, go down again, go to 1. Yes, so I just put on those slides 5 reasons why you should publish with us. I think it has a global reach. And then I did also put the metrics. So if you go to 2, it's high, it's growing. We kept getting more manuscript submission, which is good, because then it can target the right publication. And I think I did mention that it's public admin and development, so we pay attention to developmental issues, especially within the Global South. And so for that reason, we do have, we are sitting on a quartile for development is Q1, and for public administration is Q2, and I think the journal is actually growing fast. Can you go to 3? Quality, timely review, because of the volume of submission that we've been getting lately. That's the reason why Wiley now has a team of 7 within the nucleus of the editorial board, because we need to work very hard to ensure that we attend to manuscripts in record time. Go to 4. So yeah, I talked about 4 already, the diversity in the editorial board, and then the mission actually is to get publications from the Global South, because we do get, yes, we will get submissions from the US, from other Western countries, but our emphasis is actually within the non-Western countries. But because we're also looking at quality, sometimes you find more metrics showing publications from the West than we would have within the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to be asked questions. Can I get an opportunity to ask you questions? How many of you are pushed into publication by fear that if you don't publish, you perish? That you don't get scored, you don't get accredited, you don't get a subsidy? How many of you realistically publish because you have to? You have to. I know postdocs have to, because you don't publish, you're out of the system. You know that. You don't publish, you don't get promotion. Can I see the hands of those, the honest people? Oh, yeah. So the few honest people in this house. So the rest of you, I must assume that you publish because you are trying to put the picture for yourself. You are trying to put knowledge across, and because you find meaning in it. I find it hard to believe. I don't think so. The incentive system of the South African university education gets many of us to publish. We are publishing under duress, not under excitement. It's a reality we must face. We are publishing under duress, not under excitement. And many of us are publishing journals precisely for that, because the easiest way to get the credits is going through journals. Easy submissions for subsidy, it's much easier with journals and stuff like that. The Western educational system has made journals the principal way of conveying scholarship, because that's what happens in Europe in the 19th century. got nothing to do with our story. It's a colonial tradition, and we as editors are there to keep it going. We can say we do it out of love and stuff, it's fine, but part of us is to keep the tradition that we have nothing to do with going. Including standards about what is excellent, standard about what is rigor, and all that. The notion of standards, for those who know critical analysis, know. Notion of standard is invented notion. It's a particular standard for a particular group of people. Some of the standard is produced by people whose standards are questionable, but we have to work with them. We call them reviewers. Their own personal standards are questionable, but they are able to sit in judgment on somebody else's standard. The third point is the university generally operates on untrained people. I am a teacher at university, but I'm not trained for teaching. Similarly, I'm an editor, I'm not trained for editing. I'm a reviewer, I'm not trained for reviewing. What I do is what has been done to me. If I've been brutalized by others, I use this opportunity to also brutalize others forward. That's the game. And we as editors appreciate the brutal ones. Somehow, because the system requires us to be so. We call them rigorous. And this term rigor, we use it everywhere. It has no meaning. They are rigorous because they are brutal. They look like they are angry. They carry issues in their life or something. It's got nothing to do with the paper they are doing, but they have issues in life. They've been rejected so many times before. When people are emerging as academics, we don't prepare them for the brutal process of review. So they learn their own coping mechanism. One of the principal coping mechanisms is to learn to be brutal also when you get your time in future. You are coping with the brutality you suffered by brutalizing others in future in the name of rigor. The job of a reviewer is not to mark a paper. The job of a reviewer is not to be copiously checking every element of the paper and all that. The job of a reviewer is to determine whether a paper is publishable or not publishable. If it is not publishable, on the basis of 1, 2, 3, not rigor. Because, I had one student who came to one workshop with the postgraduate report and say, Prof, I was asked to improve my rigor. Where do I find the rigor? And I said jokingly, you know the rigor. You know when you get to the list of references, you see the last reference. After that, the rigor is there. You might find it there. It's a non-existent thing. Because what is rigor to me is not rigor for you. And my training, and all of those kind of things, and my level of anger also determines rigor. If I'm a person who easily angered, my rigor is somewhere up there, unreachable. So we use generics and stuff like that. So that is why we have a huge abuse of the system. And somebody says, you have a lot of minor things on your paper. Your title probably not correct. Your headlines are probably also not gelling. There's a lot of things, your tables are not properly done. There's a lot of language issues and all that. Huh? Many does not equal major. It simply means many minor. They are all over the paper up to the end. They are still minor. They are simply many in number. But there's a lot of reviewers that when there are many issues they are angry with, they say merger. When actually merger simply means fundamentally the paper is broken. Part of it needs to be rewritten afresh. It is completely jumbled between two different things. That's merger. It means fundamentally the paper is broken. The fact that there are many things that are about a colonial language, English, does not make it measure. It's not even an author's problem. That is why journals have copy editors and language editors who will fix the colonial language. So there's a lot of abuse then of people who are told we have major revisions to make when the actual revisions are minor. And that's what becomes our responsibilities as editors. We are able to mediate between the author and a cruel or a misunderstanding or a previously victimized reviewer, and be able to look at what they've raised and then say, okay, no, but your issues that you are raising, none of them relate to incorrectness in the argument or improper data included or a break in the leitmotif of a book, of a paper. Therefore, none of the things you raise are minor. There are many. The person can fix this in a period of 3 weeks or so. Major must mean the paper must go back to writing. That's not it. It's very rare to find major revisions, actually, unless the ones that we create. We created part of it. The logic, the colonial logic of education is that the fewer people make it, the better a thing is. So we're going to create measure in order to increase the rejection rate. And that'll make it a little harder. It's a logic. It's a colonial logic. It's based on a hierarchy. Only a few must speculate to the top. If you can manufacture reasons for them not speculating a job, manufacture them. That's what we do. It's part of what we should repent for on a daily basis. That you're causing injustice. Often we do it meaning well, but we're also victims of a system we have to defend. It's all of that. Now, the other thing I want to refer to is that the reviewers that we get, many of them are beneficiaries of somebody else's reviewer. But we have been so disemboweled of Ubuntu that we who were helped by others, we have published things now because somebody reviewed us. We have no Ubuntu to review for someone else. We have become so selfish that it must be me. I send a paper, but I will never review a paper for someone else. Partly because we also make it very difficult. I have had to review somewhere where the form is so long. It is so long, and the things that are there are not actually necessary because the editor himself cannot defend them. He's simply passing on a template that was given to him. Whereas, actually, I must ask, if I'm going to ask a question, I must ask whether the paper, it belongs to the journal, not belongs to a discipline, whether the paper belongs to the journal. Secondly, whether the paper is pertinent. Thirdly, whether it's academically sound. And then lastly, whether it is publishable or not. The rest of the story about whether the language and the title, why do you ask someone who's speaking broken language to make a judgment on another broken language? This is not a language expert. This is not a stylistic expert. He must be asked on substance, not on appearance and stuff, which anyway is going to be fixed by people who do the fixing. That's part of the problem. So forgive us for doing the things that we do sometimes. But we also forgive you for the things you do also sometimes. Because many authors, I know we're extending our time now, there are many authors who write a paper, they don't believe in it themselves. And they send it in the hope that we will believe in what they themselves don't believe in. When the paper is not gelling in your heart, you try to find the most academic title for it, which has therefore in it and a colon, like 2 titles and stuff like that. Nothing breaks anyone than first impression. If I'm going to read your thing, your title itself, I cannot understand what it is about. Then, of course, you create conditions for negative assessment all the way there. Who said to us that the right language is an academic language? It's the worst language ever in life. I must not write an academic language. I must write in a manner that a high school kid can read my paper and can read the title of my paper. I know that there will be a reviewer who said, this is not academic enough. Who said it must be academic? You know, I edit 3 journals. In all 3 journals, there's nowhere where it says your paper must be academic. So if the reviewer punishes an author on the basis that the paper is not academic enough, I say, please, in this journal, we never ask them to be academic. We ask them to convey knowledge because we believe in knowledge for social justice, not knowledge for sake of intellectual gymnasium. It must be in order to answer a pertinent problem and find solutions to a real problem of society. So we are not going to participate in keeping the heritage of Churchill in Africa. We're going to have to be meaningful about everything we need to do. Now, the last point I want to make is this. The journals are struggling. The vast majority of journals there, I can prove this, the vast majority of journals, perhaps 99% of journals were established by white people. Black professors are not establishing journals. True to us, post-colonial black people, we believe in inheriting and renaming white things. It's true. Name me a professor that you know that has, in the past 5 years, established a journal. There'll be few. But how many professors do we have? What is to profess then? What is to profess? To profess is to create platforms for other people to grow. To profess is to create platforms for knowledge to grow. Now, if you have this thing which you have here, over 250 papers in this conference, and I have the African Journal of Political Sciences that it publishes 2 editions a year, and that can only publish about 24 articles a year. You have how many people there? Over 250. JOPA, how many journal articles does it publish? It's not going to start from here. It perhaps had a pile-up of about 70 already that are already waiting. And then PAD, how many? Know that. Now, how do you increase input and not increase platform so that you can increase output? Got what I'm saying? We have systems that were created for a few who must now service many without expanding them. It's created a crisis. It's a stampede. Go to all of them, the back end. They have a huge number of articles waiting at the back because we are not establishing more journals. Yet establishing journals has become very easy. Every university in South Africa has access to Open Journal System, which is an online journal management system, which makes it easy for everyone to run a journal and to establish a new one. How could it be that we have a conference like this that expanded horizons of public administration to local government, to provincial administration, to development planning, to monitoring and evaluation, but there are no journals for any of these areas? Where should people publish? If you increase the energy for publishing and the quality for publishing, but you don't increase the number of platforms, you create problems for everybody. So there is no prospect that 70% of the people who are here would be published in a journal within a year or in the next 12 months. There's very limited prospect, actually. It's a serious thing. Many journals are publishing in 2 years in delay, which means I'm publishing this year what I received 2 years ago. The second journal is the International Journal of African and Asian Studies. It's a number 1 quintal journal. It's a high impact journal and stuff like that. It can only publish in a year 20 articles. And we receive, and not I, we are a team, we receive on average about 22 a month. So on a monthly basis, we are deliberately rejecting about 80 so that they don't pile up in the system. Because there is no prospect. They don't know those who are upset. They will get a letter which says, thank you, we've received your thing, but there's no prospect of it being considered in the next 2 editions. To give you a right to seek alternative, we return it back to you. If you wish, you can return it back to us. we don't want to deceive you and keep it and not tell you that there is no chance it will be considered for the next 2 editions, which means for the next year and a half. So we have to do that because it's the condition we're facing. How do we resolve it? We need to increase the number of journals. We need to go for open access digital journals. They are the easiest ones to work. They are the easiest one to get accredited. The Journal for BRIC Studies, which I established, and the African Journal of Political Science, which I re-established. It used to exist. It's 42 years old now. Both of them were accredited within 2 years. Because open access, when it's done properly, followed the procedures properly, you can get back into accreditation. You can get your journal actually accredited in the next 2 to 3 years if you establish it now. I'm encouraging you, please do it. For the sake of this generation that's coming behind us, they will not find anywhere to publish. If we could, Prof, have 3 or 4 people initiate journals now, it will reduce so much pressure that we have in the system. It will really, really help a lot. We really need that. The second solutions for me, we need a lot more co-authored books, which is when you realize you are sitting in this conference, you've met people who are working in the same area, we're all working on local government and service delivery, and then you get 3 or 4 people, and then we commit to each other that each of us will write 2 chapters. And there's 4 of us. So 2 times 4 is 8. Then we'll write an introduction and a conclusion. It becomes a co-authored book, not an edited book. We need co-authored books. We really need a lot of them. Again, with books, you almost control when your article will come out. With journals, you cannot control. So that's one thing. Similarly, with edited books, you can control when they come out. So go out there, initiate, which is to write just a paragraph of a call for paper. That's all you need. And then get it out there. Guys, when you have a PhD, part of your duty is to be a leader in your area. That is how you get promoted also. You must have led something to become an associate professor. You need a lot of them. And we have a crisis at that area. We have a crisis in social sciences of senior lecturer and associate professor. We have a huge number of lecturers who are stuck in lecturing, and they never go up because they don't acquire the things they need to tick, like academic citizenship, running a journal, joining someone who runs a journal to co-lead, and all of those kinds of things. So I ask us to also go for edited book volumes. If you feel that you cannot, they will always find a publisher. You can even go to the Western one, the big ones, if need be, that publish you for free. But you still need to get more and more people to publish. And lastly, we really want to ask that those who are senior, please don't be selfish. You have already done 5, 6, 7 papers of your own. You have established yourself. Now take somebody along, co-author with somebody. Use your pedigree to bring them in. But don't abuse them. If they've done more work, if it's based on their data, they are the first author, you are the second author. Being a second author when you are senior is an honor. It's not a degrading. It shows you are mentoring someone. I really, really do appeal. I'm looking at all of you. I'm going to look at your behavior going forward. This is not a threat. It's a promise. Thank you.
Good evening, colleagues. So it's actually nice speaking last because I don't think there's anything I can add from what the professors have said. Yeah. My name is Thando Hulashe first, from the University of Mpumalanga, but sitting here, I represent the Journal of Local Government Research and Innovation, or JOLGRI for short, okay? I'm going to use this opportunity to market our journal. We are still a baby journal. We are only 5 years old. Yeah, so, but we are accredited with DHET under the DOAJ category. So we specifically and specially focus on local government research. That is all we publish. So anything local economic development, indigenous knowledge system, anything that says local government, we publish it. We operate on a rolling publication model where as journals come in, or rather as manuscripts come in, we take them through the peer, through the peer review process, and then after that we publish them, and then at the end of the year we then compile an issue of the submitted articles. So I think what I want to stress on is that I will share with UED our information as well as our website. What I can stress is that please look at the submission guidelines when you submit your manuscripts. There are compulsory documents that we would ask you to complete, like the authorship forms. If your study has any primary data, we will ask for ethical clearances. We will also ask you for language editing, so a certificate. So please look at those issues, colleagues, when you are submitting, because we do pre-checks via our publisher. I didn't mention this. Our publishers are Oasis publishers. The journal itself is housed under the University of Fort Hare. It's just a pity Prof. Chinyamurindi has left because we fall under his department of, I think it's now called, it was the old Department of Public Administration, but it's now called the Department of Applied Management, Administration, and Ethical Leadership. And our chief editor is Professor Nzewi. She's unfortunately in the USA, so she couldn't join us for this particular session. We're truly trying to, establish a footprint within the country, but also we do receive, continental manuscripts, and even I think last month I saw one from India even. So slowly but surely we are getting there. I think some of the colleagues in SAPAM also serve within our editorial board. I know of Dr. Ramalobe. I don't know, would you mind standing up, my brother, so that they can see you? So if you need any further information, there's also Dr. Pillay. I didn't see her. There's also Prof. Harry from Univend, is also in our editorial board. So if you need any information, colleagues, you can speak to them. We do also, appreciate and look for collaborations for people who want to guest edit issues. Next year it's local government elections, so we are a local government journal. We would appreciate anyone with the speciality within local government to please talk to us. As the Prof said, it's just a short proposal that you can submit to us and host a special issue. We do try by all means to have a quick turnaround time, but obviously through reviews and I think most of you know me because I've sent you emails asking you to review papers for us. Some of you do agree, but some of you, you blue tick me. Please, colleagues, and we do acknowledge our reviewers yearly, so please assist us with that. I don't think there's much to add. And we also use, I think it's Turnitin and I think it's called Authenticate. To just check similarity index and so on. We encourage people to keep it lower than 10%. Yeah, but nowadays we're seeing things with AI, Prof. Yeah, we're seeing things with the AI, and sometimes, people submit things, and you can even see within, the way it's written that this was generated by AI. You look for the references. Some references don't exist because, yeah, Chat has generated some, references. But yeah, colleagues, I will share the information, and then please submit your papers. Thank you very much.
Can I add just one point? We're going to, where we are moving, we're going to have to increase the number of vernacular language. Journals that accept vernacular language article. So Joppa gotta have to have an article in Setswana. It's absolutely important because it's part of the decolonization thing. Because we are getting a lot of, UJ, we're celebrating, I don't know how many students who are getting their MA and their PhD written in different disciplines in their home languages. Thank you.
Okay, wait, hold the mic. I have one, so I've got questions for each of you. Oh, Prof. Melo, please hold the mic.
Okay.
My question to you is, what is the difference between a working paper and a journal paper, and how does the transition happen from when it was a working paper up to it becoming a journal paper? Because many of the guys here are writing working papers.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, a working paper would be a paper that the author or the authors are still in need of guidance to develop it further so that they are satisfied with the paper itself and the quality. And once, and normally it would be maybe emerging scholars. And I have heard this in this venue and other venues, that this is still work in progress. So, so a person is still teasing out the views of the readership about this paper. And in fact, I think you were asking about AI and other things. There is also the emergence of what is known as the preprint. So you would have an article being submitted for not only for the reviewers to comment on it, but everybody who can be able to log into that site to look at it and make comments. And once you have made comments, the author can now go back and do the adjustments and then submit for formal review. So this is more of a process in the development of a paper that can be acceptable in the end.
But universities like Harvard have a working paper series where top scholars have a working paper series. And sometimes you struggle when you are citing it because it was a working paper and then later on it will emerge in a journal or in a handbook somewhere. So will you encourage students, in particular postdocs and so on, to invest in the development of working papers?
Yeah, I think with us as journals as well, in addition to the formal submission platform, perhaps what we need to look into is the possibility of creating another platform for working papers. I know of a conference that me and the president attended. You submit a paper before even going to the conference, but that paper you can still offload and people might have seen it. So if we can have such a platform, we will then be able to help a lot of, especially emerging scholars, to be able to get the views of a number of people. Because sometimes the professor that you're attached to may not have all the time to go through your paper But if you throw it out there and it is on the internet, it is not only limited to people who are in South Africa. Even people outside South Africa can look at the paper and say, these are my comments, and then you can go and work on them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Prof. Mangai, there is an issue about certain people who advance in scholarship by publishing only in one journal. Like someone who's got 15 papers in one journal. Will you advise that the colleagues here could pursue something of that sort? You know, what are the pitfalls of doing such?
This is it's indeed an interesting question. I think you don't want to have a situation where your papers are published with only one journal, because number one, it probably would give an impression of you having some form of affiliation. Maybe that would be the first impression, that people would think, okay, maybe the editor is your uncle or your nepotism. It can be, you know, viewed in that sense. But also for you, as a scholar, you want to diversify where you're publishing in, because those different publishing outlets, the journal or the publishers, they have their reputation, they have their credibilities that are also different. And I don't see even the possibilities of publishing in, for instance, top journals, and it's consistent. I mean, Prof just told us it can take up to a year, 2 years to publish in one of those top journals. I do have a publication with the Australian Journal of Public Administration, is actually considered as one of the tops. It took almost about a year and a half to get it published, from the time of submission to the time of publication, because they also factor in, so the early view came out in 2024, but the volume and the issue was issued this year. So if you would target just that journal to want to publish, it would take you much longer time to publish. So you want to actually diversify for the sake of the audience, but also what you're publishing, right, might require other outlets than just one journal that you're targeting. And maybe if I would add to the question you asked, Prof, I think some of those working papers are from multilateral organizations, the United Nations, the International Labour Organization. So if they contract you as a consultant and you do the work, you submit a report, that report is then, you know, published as a working paper. I had the opportunity to do that with the International Labour Organization. It actually was a research, went through even peer review, and it eventually was published as a working paper. I couldn't get subsidy for that publication, even though I invested a lot, because they considered that, and even though it's a credible work, but it's called working paper, and it's actually published by the International Labour Organization. So I
Well,
lost.
at least you got paid for it. At least you got paid. Zondi, very briefly, I mean, many people are concerned, especially early career academics, about the idea of publishing international, because they are always being told it's got to be international. I mean, how do you navigate those dynamics? And you might find a platform international in Turkey, but it's not in the DHET list. So what then do you do?
One observation, that international does not mean Namibia. International does not mean publishing a journal in Malawi. International does not mean publish a journal in in Dar es Salaam.
If it's not in the
It is
DHET,
an acronym for Publish in the West.
yeah,
We just don't want to say it openly. We're simply saying Publish in the West because it's higher in our thinking about hierarchies. It's better. It's a form of arrival. Nobody will read it because nobody is interested in the situation of Kiani in London. But you still give it to them, though they don't want it,
yeah.
because you are looking for validation. I'm very skeptical of internationalists, because I'm also international to people who are in London.
Yeah.
Isn't it so? So I think people should not be under pressure to go for so-called international.
But it's you senior professors who are saying that.
I told you that professors are part of the... To be a professor sometimes means you've qualified to be part of the maintenance of the system. You become an induna in a colonial farm.
Yeah.
Your duty is to preserve the traditions. You have no understanding of yourself.
Yeah.
You are doing to them what they did to you. And actually, you can't become a professor in certain cases without showing you are conforming. Promotion in a colonial system is affirmation that you are assimilating. I know it because those who failed to conform at the early stage, they exited school. They were chased out because they were failing to write an A the way it was required to do.
Yeah.
They kept on writing the A that is different from this one, and the system does not like difference, does not like originality. Then they do it. The rest of us, all of these people are evidence of conforming, not of radicalism and all that. The more you confirm, the more you pass. That's what the system says.
Yeah.
You pass and upgrade and go up. No, that. This one is similar to the idea of publish in a high impact journal, which is a rule set up by university administrators who don't publish anywhere. And they don't even have an ability to publish in an unaccredited journal, but they're able to police whether you publish in a high impact journal and all of that. Because this high impact is itself relative. By the way, you are not able to achieve high impact in terms of the algorithms of the calculation because you publish for an African audience. In order to get a high impact, you must appeal in the areas where the data is captured. So you are damned to be never high impact. But we should not desire high impact anyway. Scores. We must desire high impact in society, not in scores. So if your journal like this one ends up being read by municipalities, forget whether it's high impact or international. There's a journal to do that because this is where you want to be read. So my advice is, if, as it was said here, only a small group say they are under pressure from the system, the rest of them are saying they are doing for social purpose, for prestige, to establish themselves, then my advice is, forget this international. Publish where you want to be read. Don't take your paper to Turkey. No one wants to read it there.
Okay. Last question for you, Tano. You spoke about a special issue. So if you can explain what is a special issue, how does one go about to be given the right to edit a special issue, and what is special about it?
Okay, thank you, Prof. I thought you were going to give me a pass, but it's fine. So a special issue is an issue that is specifically themed to, fit a certain, theme, for a lack of a better word. And you can be part of it by writing a proposal. There are forms on our website that you can fill in and submit to the chief editor. I'm not too sure what makes it special, Prof, but what makes it special is that it focuses on certain issues that obviously the guest editor would want to focus on. And a call will come out once the proposal is approved. We give authors a certain period of time to complete their papers. Then it goes through the very same peer review process that would go onto an ordinary issue. And then it gets published, at the end of the term.
1 point to add there. Your journal is published how many editions a year?
Only one.
Oh, you do one journal edition a year. And then a special edition is when you create a special edition. Edition, because it's special, because the others are ordinary. And this one, and it is, the ordinary one is edited by the appointed editors. This one is when Professor Nkuna comes forward and say, I found 6 papers here, I would like to edit them. So you play the role of an editor once off. So that's why it is special. Special because a special person came forward. Prof. Nkuna.
All right. Thank you very much to you, colleagues. I hope you found this to be a useful conversation. It will link up nicely with the next one. Please do stop them as they move around, these editors of ordinary and special issues, and hopefully we'll see a lot more papers. I think when they close tomorrow, or sometime they will explain there's some proposals that we have around a series of writing workshops and stuff like that to cultivate a lot more, both for journals and well as for books. So, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. It should be of interest to you. So thank you very much. Over to the special editor of the special issue.
Okay, good evening once again. Good evening, colleagues. So this is going to be very simple. I know all of us have been busy throughout the day, but this is clearly a wrap, I promise you. So what we're going to do now, we have 2 books that we are launching, as it is customary practice that we also celebrate work already done, so that we don't only talk about what we're going to do, but also look at what has been done. So as you can see on page 67 of the program, we have 2 books there. So what I'll do, I'll invite a representative for each book to take no more than 10 minutes to excite us about the book, because if you read the book to us, I can promise you, we will just go and quote you without even reading your book, when we do our papers. So just give us some excitement. On that note, I invite you, Prof. Melo. I take it that you will be the one who's speaking on the first book on performance monitoring and evaluation in Africa, 2024. And then Prof. Busani also to come and speak on the other book, the public institutional practices, building a democratic adaptive state in South Africa. So no more than 10 minutes, you are just giving us a sense. Then I'll ask Prof. Makanya for 5 minutes to react to this and speak to what we need to do, some agenda setting inspired by this work. And then Professor Maseremune will give a wrap on where to in terms of grounding this area of publishing. So I've spoken to 30 minutes, all in all, for all of you. So you can all come here, all 4 of you. Yeah. So it's Melo, Ngaweni, and then Makanya, and then Maseremune, in that order. Yeah, straight to the point so that we can give it a wrap. Okay? Let's go for it. There is a reason why I'm going to stand here. Because sometimes it gets very exciting. I have to stand here. President, I have to stand here to save the people. Yeah, to protect the people, I stand here. Okay? You start, Prof. Melo. On the book, I've already mentioned the title, but you can do so.
Thank you very much, Program Director. This is the book. It is published by SAPAM. The title is Performance Monitoring and Evaluation in Africa. Now, one thing that you realize with the title is that the book tries to combine performance and monitoring and evaluation. When you read, you go into the library, look at articles, you realize that you would normally have a book that is focusing purely on performance management. And you would have a book that is dealing with monitoring and evaluation. But before I go too far with regard to this book and my 8 minutes that are still left, let me invite the co-authors, the contributors, because I know they're here, so that they can stand and you can see them as well. The contributors, Dr. Matebesi, I see you. Okay. We have 3 of the contributors. The one on my left is Dr. Matebesi, Nochulwana. And then right at the back, we have Dr. Oh, no, not doctor. She has been promoted lately. Professor. Professor D. Koza. And then we also have Dr. Siviwe Mdijwa. Thank you so much. Just the brief background as well as the route that we have traveled. The idea behind this book started in 2022 with a proposal to the National Research Foundation for a workshop, a 2-day workshop. The foundation agreed. And the purpose was to bring together authors from Africa mainly, so that we can share experiences relating to performance as well as monitoring and evaluation. And indeed, we had a number of authors from different countries. But let me tell you, when you start with the concept of a book, at the beginning, you might have 100 people. But when it comes to the actual writing, the numbers decrease. You set a deadline, and people disappear. People are no longer answering the emails that you are writing to them. So ultimately, we had authors who are coming from South Africa. We had authors who are coming from Uganda. We had Tanzania. We had Zimbabwe. And there is also an author who reflected largely on Nigeria. So all in all, we have about 13 chapters, and we had a total of about 18 academics. Now, sometimes it's not that easy to coordinate these 18 independent thinkers. But what we also did, in addition to the workshop that we had on our own at UNISA, funded by the National Research Foundation, some of the chapters that I have in here, I actually harvested them from SAPAM. In the conference before the last one, and I think this conference was held in Beachwood, I actually targeted specific individuals and presenters of papers. Dr. Mdijwa is one of them. There's another doctor who is not here. I also approached them to say, because you are writing on this particular aspect, would you be prepared to share your paper with me? And indeed, they were willing to share the paper with me. So that is how perhaps in future we can also collaborate in terms of the publication of papers. So we reflect largely in terms of the contents on the South African situation, but we also have case studies from other countries. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Prof. Ngawin.
Yeah, thank you. So the book, this one, which is open access, it's available. You can download it and have it. It's a very unique book in a sense that, as part of marking the 30 years of democracy, celebration, we convened. I wrote to DGs when I was still at NSG. All DGs, I asked them to nominate people who could write case studies of cases that are very special, of emerging practice, of best practices in democratic South Africa. So DGs responded, some did not respond, and we started cultivating. So we spent about 9 months training people to write the cases. So that's an investment that we made to these public servants. Eventually, there's 22 chapters. Over 30 people wrote. Many of them were collaborating. Some did drop out for a range of reasons, as we have mentioned. It's unique in a sense that because as a school, we needed to cultivate the art and craft of writing for academic publication purpose. And so we had to be patient. We had to waiver the cost of training. We worked with our partner institution in Singapore, Civil Service College, who have mastered the art of doing cases for over 30 years now. And most importantly, we had to keep the people motivated. I mean, I had one of my head of research, which is Johnny. I had to keep him motivated. I also had to whip him a number of times. Unfortunately, he's not here because he's got engagements elsewhere. I had to whip Johnny a couple of times because I needed this book to come out. We didn't want to publish it just as a report, but we needed to have it as a book. And the lesson is, within the state itself, which is why we're bringing practitioners here, there is talent, there are ideas, and it forced people in departments to think about, of the million things that they've done, can they pick one that could constitute a best practice? But most importantly, which lastly on this particular book, is that we need to deal with an epistemic issue around how you write a case for publication, a case for teaching, and just a lengthy case the same way that Princeton and others are documenting case studies. That is where the tricky part is. That is why sometimes even journal editors will struggle, because someone will submit a case study, which is a teaching case study, and want it to be published in the journal. And in many cases, like in the papers today, everybody was a case of, which is really a research case study. These things are not the same, and so we need to cultivate and provide a lot more training on it. And this book, I'm smuggling it. It also came out yesterday. Well, in all of these books, I'm the second or third editor, because I was cultivating, I was doing what Zonde was saying. This one has got authors from all BRICS countries. We did a conference, we cultivated it. It took about 2 years because it was very difficult. On a lighter note, the mayor of Tshwane got the copy and said, oh, so, but principal, the Chinese researchers here were writing about AI, spatial reconfiguration of cities, and the colleague from Tshwane wrote about gender. And but at least she wrote. The book is out. We are proud that we've been able to produce this. And there's 2 young people at the back. I must say it because this is part of the SAPAM. Please stand up, Aya and Sine. Aya and Sine. You see these 2 young people? There's 2 books that are coming out in November. I've worked with them as editors. They are the first editors. It's published by Pelgrave, Springer. They've had to learn the art and craft of working on an edited volume. There is Malachi Easy. Also, she's had to do the same. Where's Dr. T? Where is he? We worked with him and worked on a book that was published by UJ Press. So what Zonde was saying, there's a lot more that is coming, and we are hoping that through platforms like this, we can get many people who are here either to publish or to be co-editors of volumes. Thank you.
Okay. So, Prof. Ngawini coordinate all this work while he was Director General, doing a lot of work in the School of Government. So if there is drive and focus, we can all do more so that next year we want to unleash the big one, which I have asked Prof. Makanya to work on a concept of a handbook on public policy and management. So we can't do the work that we're doing when we don't have an authoritative book that defines the space that we are talking about. So I delegated upward. You know, I understand that you can't do it in other places, but you can do it in academia. You can always delegate upward. So Prof is just going to give us some kind of a ballpark idea on the road towards the production of the most authoritative book that is going to redefine academia, will bring live case studies and all those kind of things. But doesn't mean not take the thunder from him. Over to you, Prof.
I must confess that I plunged myself into a crisis by having a discussion, with Dr. Nkuna. All that I did, in all honesty, was just to say, having spent most of my working life, at a university, I've actually begun to understand, the discussion that has been held just before we came here, from the side of the editors, because that basically was the language, at the time when we became academics, that there are these routes of how you can publish in an international journal. And so you're asking yourself, what does that mean? Does it mean that we are not international, wherever we are and so on? High impact journals and so on. But by the way, there is a professor then who decided to do something very interesting, this rating of universities. He said, I choose not to be part of that. But what I would rather like to do is to contest that space. So all that he would be doing was to go and present papers when such debates about rating of universities was held, to say how bad that arrangement was, because it had nothing to do with us, but with them. So we used to fund that because we knew that it made a lot of sense. So what I was then saying to our colleagues here was that, since my arrival here, on Sunday, I've actually watched an opportunity here where you see this high level, of brain power that resides, in these bureaucrats, on the one hand, and also similarly the high-powered, kind of intellectual, grounding that you find in the scholars that are in this conference. And I was saying, by the way, universities need study material. And universities need study material that matter, not study material that is imported from countries that have nothing to do with our experiences. So then I was saying, but what is being discussed here has to do with the challenges that are confronting us, but at the same time has to do with the kind of future that we've chosen. But to what extent does that then feed into the teaching that we are doing at universities? So I said, let's not waste time. Let's basically put the two together to produce those books that are supposed to be read at universities. So that's all that I said. That's why I said I plunged myself into a crisis when I discussed this. Because in reality, we have the work right here. So where we are going to be saying to the practitioners, now we want to begin to sit around the table, that you spell out what is that you've been doing in the process of this policy formulation, how you went about doing it, those consultations, that iterative process that resulted in this kind of, a policy framework that in reality required, some kinds of investments that should have at least provided, the technical, opportunities on the one hand, but on the other, the resources, to ensure that whatever is envisaged does happen. But there is a lopsided process that then began to unfold, which partly explains the challenges that we're confronting. So where did things then go wrong? So these are kinds of processes that are supposed to be driven right here, so that we produce the work in the context of this policy environment that we are talking about, which we are immersed in, but management, so that we pull the two together. But every 5 years, let's have an opportunity of beginning to have a sense about what then has happened, so that that critique produces the next book. So what it does is that you don't teach something that is abstract. You teach something that students can go out there and practice. Well, that's really what we are looking forward to. And this is the kind of work that is already there. So then I said to this team that this can actually just start right away, so that when we meet as SAPAM, we basically present a report on what has happened in the previous year in order to produce the work that these universities require. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. My friend, reflect on the same issues of how to foreground the publishing journey and mainstreaming the work of SAPAM, and in different ways. Doesn't have to be directly SAPAM, but SAPAM can inspire many things to happen using its convening power, collaborations between practitioners and academia in producing books. How can we go about that? Over to you.
Thanks, Chairperson. Maybe let me start by congratulating colleagues. I mean, what we are doing is wonderful. Publishing books is not just only about getting a book out there, you know, because I see that as a very important striker to shape the geography of knowledge, because for quite some time the ratio has been so skewed. And thank you so much, Prof, for getting yourself into trouble, particularly on the public policy book. In South Africa, we don't really have a public policy book which truly reflects the policy-making dynamics of South Africa. There is only one book, but that book, in terms of its logic, philosophy, and theoretical foundation, is based on the book which was published in 1975 in America by James Anderson. All what they did was just to bring a little South African context. And therefore, the question of having a book on public policy is critically important. It can't wait. It's very important. Most of that public policy is a key aspect when we talk about statecraft. What is important, just to get back to what you said, Chairperson, already, and I'm very happy that already SAPAM has actually established itself as a publishing platform. But for us to really contribute significantly towards shaping the geography of knowledge through publishing books, we need to make sure that we establish strategic relationship with other well-established publishers. And I'm happy that most of them are out there waiting for us. But that relationship should not actually be about dictating the content of the knowledge that you want to contribute. And that is very important. So all what I can say, Chairperson, is that SAPAM, you are in the right track. Let's explore other opportunities that could optimize our pursuit in terms of trying to change the ratio of knowledge, the geography of knowledge. And yeah, that is what I could actually say, Chairperson. It is not easy to publish. Publishers do have their own politics, and it is very important that we establish our own platform for publication so that even if politics are there, they are our politics that we can manage, right? So that is all what I can say. But thank you so much. And the case study Busani, I greatly appreciate it because much of our teaching really lack the South African context, and that much is greatly appreciated. I hope colleagues will actually prescribe those books, and Prof. Mello as well. That area that we ventured in is critically important. But like as I say, Chairperson, let's just try to leverage on some well-established publishers who are willing to work with us, because also what is important is to leverage on their capacity to circulate the book. Because as much as, and make no mistake, people out there want to learn so much from South Africa. That is why already I know of a book, Busani, which was published by the World Bank. It's a case of SARS, it's a case of SASA, it's a case of Home Affairs, because at some point, these institutions were, and I think NPA as well, right? And unfortunately, the only person who came from South Africa who was part of that book is one sister of ours, Dr. Renoshi Mokate, but the rest were from elsewhere. But also it was a project of the World Bank. It shouldn't have been. It must be the project of SAPAM. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Profs. You know, I observed something about publishers. Sometimes we are scared by middlemen to believe that this is very complicated. The 2 volumes that he is referring to, that's coming in November, that he facilitated, I happened to eavesdrop there. Even the engagements with Palgrave, I was part of that process of engagement. Was very simple and straightforward. Was scholarly engagement. So I also have my possibility of having my monograph coming out with Palgrave. And I have been engaging with them directly, you know, without the middleman, talking to the editor. So sometimes we get so scared and want to go to a middleman. We don't need to do that. So, Chairperson, being mean, okay, this program says this engagement will end at 20 hours. And I think we must do that and end at that right time. So, to the colleagues, congratulations. You will tell us, obviously, the terms and conditions of access, whether we buy or whether we'll get complimentaries, some of us who are lucky. But I'll leave it to yourselves as you mingle around to tell us about that. So, colleagues, I think it's only fair. Let me make an announcement that the cars parked outside should be parked inside. Every day after 6 o'clock, we need to be indoors. So it's fair to conclude on that note, at least having served 8 minutes. Yes, the review of books is going to be very important. In different platforms, we'll have to do that if we are really in the scholarly community. So colleagues, without chowing into the remaining 8 minutes, I suggest that we adjourn. No, the books have been launched. So the launch means that they tell us about the books, we congratulated them, and then we define the path going forward on the publication of more books. And I think, President, along the way, we can have another session on this particular matter of books before the next get-together. On that note, the session is adjourned. Thank you.